You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 406, Jedi's End. This is a show where we will break down the final 5 issues of the High Republic comic written by Kevin Scott and penciled by Ario Anindito. And I got to say, it's some of the best comic book writing that's Marvel's been putting out. We talked about that earlier today on another show, and I stand by that. There's some really, really good stuff in here. And so the show is meant to be kind of a recap. And if you've not had a chance to get into the comics and you want to know kind of what was happening and how phase 1 ended for the comics, this is the place to be. And if you're a big fan of the hero of Hetzal, this is the show for you, because we will be talking about her ad nauseum in just a little bit. And speaking of heroes, the hero of the Cantina Cast is with us tonight. Jonesy, welcome to the show. How are you doing, sir?
Thank you. I thought you were going to call me the hero of Houston, which would have been 100% true.
I was going to say the hero of ad nauseum, but then I was like, no, that doesn't sound, that's not.
No, yeah, the hero of nausea, I think, would be wildly accurate.
Yep. So,
right.
Yeah,
no, and you're right, man. We talked about this earlier today. This is the, like, for a 5-issue arc. It was like with Clone Wars. You know, with Clone Wars, you had these, some arcs just really stood out, right? Like, Avar and some of those others. And man, this is one of those that you really just, you jump right into and you just don't want to put it down. You got to read and read and read and read. And like you said, some of the artwork, especially issue 15, the artwork, just start to finish, every single page is some of the most beautiful colors, but also just the expression and everything else that's going on is really just fantastic. I reread issue 15 just for fun, like 4 times today.
Yeah.
Just because I love looking at it, not only just, and not only just absorbing all the information again and again and again.
Yeah, it definitely has all the feels, if you will, in a lot of different ways. So let's do it. Let's talk about it. We've got no news. There may be news. We don't care anymore because we've been really itching to talk about this. So what I want to do is kind of start off with here's what you missed. And these are just like some of the stuff that leads up to the comics, things that we're not going to get into the explanation of them, but they're probably essential so that you can kind of understand how we're going to close out this whole first phase 1 of the comics. So I'll take the first one. Avar Kriss, Keeve Trennis, Sskeer, and the twins, Sarek and Tarek, have been the primary characters. So again, if you've been wondering where the heck Avar Kriss has been, she's been in the comic book. Let me do a couple here, and then I'll let you read we'll split them half and half. So
Sure.
During the events of the Rising Storm, Avar Kriss forged a temporary alliance with Myarga, and I hope I'm saying that right, Myarga the Hutt, in order to finally put an end to the Drengir. So you may have heard the rumors were true. She was out there, creating alliances with some of the scum and villainy of the Earth or the galaxy, and it was all for a purpose. The mother of the Drengir, known as the Great Progenitor, was captured and placed in the Bogan collection on Starlight Beacon. If your first thing you're thinking is Starlight Beacon's gone, what happened to the mother, Drengir? That's a great question. I'm glad you asked that. I don't know. We'll get into it in this issue, but that's interesting to keep a note. And the last one is
she's got all the irrigation she could possibly ever desire.
Yeah, she's got plenty of water, plenty of sunlight. Maybe they're back again in phase 3. We'll see. And then the last thing, one of the coolest aspects, I think, of this story is that Sskeer is losing his connection to the Force. And I think earlier on, we kind of felt like, oh, this was is it tied to the Nameless? Is it tied to the Force in general? No, it's actually something a little bit more scientific that we'll get to in a little bit. But he's definitely he's losing his connection with the Force, and it's affecting him and the people around him in a lot of different ways.
All right. And so everything coming up to issue 11 here is really focused on the chase for Lourna Dee. So we've mentioned this before. Lourna Dee, they believe, is the Eye of the Nihil. And so Avar Kriss is a bit on a mission to find her that's really bordering on obsession. So Keeve and Tarek go undercover, and this is actually one of the covers, in order to find Lourna Dee. So they actually have their own storm ship. They do the little lightning bolts over the eyes. They've got the gear and everything else. But that's always not quite the way you want to work out, right? So when Keeve's undercover, she's nearly forced by nearly forced by Runner Teeter.
I don't know. I don't know what that's from.
I'm just gonna go from my memory of it all. So they really want Keeve to prove her worth, right, and make a kill. And Keeve, and again, this had something to do with the Hutts, if I remember right. Man, we're really good at this. But anyway, so they start questioning, and of course, there's always something that doesn't work out, and basically, Myarga blows their cover. I think this is Myarga, right? Mm-hmm. So Myarga blows their cover, and Lourna Dee shows up and turns on the Nameless, the Leveler, onto Tarek and Lourna, and onto. I love your notes sometimes, brother, but man, yeah, okay. So not on Lourna and Tarek, but on Keeve and Tarek.
Yeah, Keeve and Tarek.
This is why we shouldn't do these late at night, right?
Well, it's okay. So pause real quick.
I didn't proofread very well.
No, maybe we'll edit this out. So I jumped on again with 2 minutes to spare. Normally I go through these notes and clean up all the errata, and I never had a chance to do it. So this is gonna be a fun show.
Usually I do too. Usually the afternoon before we go on, I go and clean it up, and even little misspellings that just knack at me. And so, but anyway, so long story short, though, Keeve and Tarek are there. They're told to kill the Hutt. They don't want to do it, and then Myarga sells them out, right? And so when that happens, of course, then they all turn it on that, and then they want to make an example of them, and they let the Leveler loose. And this is where things get really, really curious and interesting. Tarek and Seret have a twin bond, right? And a force bond. And Tarek and Seret are nowhere near each other when this happens, but their connection is so strong, and they're a they, right? I mean, they don't use the individual tense. They don't say I or me. It's always we. Mm-hmm. And so you always have to speak about them as a couple, basically. And the way that the Leveler was working against Tarek was actually affecting Seret on the Ataraxia, even though they're some insane distance apart. Yeah, they're really far apart, and they're still doing it. Of course, Keeve is just going crazy, right? She's everything we've read in the books and everything else of the experience the Jedi have with when the Leveler is in spades. I mean, she's tripping out, she's crying, she's freaking out. And they kind of pull out and look at the, some of the folks around her in one of these issues, and they're like, "Wow, this really works," like the Nihil do. And so, but again, so Tarek and Seret start to calcify, right, and become the husk, but they basically shut themselves down into more of a forced trance, and so they're not dead, but they are really, really, really close. And so that's basically where we tie in right to chapter 11 or issue 11.
They kind of go into low power mode, kind of like
like R2.
Like R2, yeah. And Rise of Skywalker, or Force Awakens, Rise of Skywalker, that whole series, whatever that was. But yeah, and by the way, so Runner Teetar was supposed to say Runner Keetar, or Zetar, yeah, is Zetar. What it was supposed to say, but I don't know why it did. So we can call him either Teetar or Zetar, however.
We'll just blame. Well, Lourna calls him Zeet.
Does she?
Yeah.
I didn't catch that if she did.
Yeah, I didn't know Nihil's did nicknames, but
yeah,
sure, we do now.
Okay, well, let's get into issue 11, chapter 1, and the first chapter is called Only Fear, and it very much deals with the onset of fear. And so at this point, we're on this planet called, I'm going to call it Zeiss. I don't know if that's the correct pronunciation.
Xais, yeah.
Yeah.
Your guess is as good as mine on that one.
So gas planet in the Outer Rim, and we get to see the effects of the Leveler. And this is we've talked about, when you read the book and you hear about the Leveler, and you kind of you're in the perspective of what they're going through and what they can't do and that sort of thing. But what the comic does really well is visualize what the Jedi are seeing as the Nameless is come in, and it's having an impact on them. And it's really cool artwork. Like the coloring it's just amazing. I don't know what they did, if it's a combination of like computer graphics or computer digital art versus traditional art or a handwritten drawn art, but really great stuff. But you get to see all of that, and throughout the entire time, Keeve is like tripping, like she's being impacted by this Leveler, and she's completely scared, and she keeps saying, she's trying to recite the mantra to herself about there is no fear, there is no fear, there is no fear, and eventually she just gives in. She's scared because
she's like, there's only fear.
Yeah, that's how she ends it, right? There's only fear. She can't feel anything but fear. And like we talked about during the, I guess the Marchion Row comic as well. This is for me, this is like the crowning achievement of Marchion Row. The fact that he was able to do something like this to all of the Jedi and cause them to be, I'm going to say they're afraid, even though they may, they've got a lot of pride. They won't admit that.
Right.
But the fact that they're reeling now and they're regrouping and trying to figure out what we're supposed to do. I mean, I get it. There's probably some pragmatic approaches to, okay, we can't just be out there and die. But at the same time, he's caused them to feel something that eventually could potentially lead to, fear leads to anger, hate, and suffering, right? Which we all know are the telltale signs of the dark side.
Right.
And then the other, and we talked about but Tarek kind of turning inside out, and Sarek can feel it as well. I mean, he's feeling 100% of what's happening here. So
that was really wild how the pain just traversed, the entire galaxy. And what they were able to do was they were actually able to trace that with that twin bond. They were actually able to trace that in order to find Keeve and Tarek, because they didn't know where they were at. They knew they were on a special mission to find Lourna and infiltrate, but without that bond, it simultaneously hurt them but saved them at the same time.
Yeah. There was the next moment here. I mean, Keeve was, I mean, she's been pretty much a badass the entire time.
Yeah.
And like all the other Jedi, it feels like I would be interested to see how Yoda reacts to this thing, if it has the same impact, right? But nonetheless, she was, yeah, no, yeah, there's, well, so for Keeve, anyways, she is, she's actually down on her knees, and I thought it was interesting because Zetar almost kills her. Like, he's got a clear shot. He's in his little, his little mechanized, what was it, Krang from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles outfit thing that he's wearing,
Right.
I invoked the TMNT quite a bit on the show. I don't understand why, but yeah, he's got a clear shot and he's about to like kill her, and it's actually Lourna Dee that stops him because they feel like they want to keep the Jedi alive because they need to test this out, right? They're still not, like, there was a part of like they need to feed the Nihil, they need to feed the Nameless, but there's also like they want to make sure that they keep the Jedi alive so they can just monitor them and make sure that what happened on with Loading Greatstorm wasn't kind of like a one-off type fluke type thing,
Right. And Lourna, you have to remember, these folks haven't seen it in person before. They haven't seen the effects of it in person. And so Lourna and them, or Lourna in particular, wants to see, does this thing really work, or was this a fluke?
Mm-hmm.
So she really wants to make sure that this is actually a real thing. And again, she's bringing these back to Marchion, but I'm of half a mind to think that she was very much thinking that, if the other guys on this ship happen to die, then maybe I'll just take these and I can kind of create my own type of, I don't know. It's always difficult to understand what Lourna's, plans really are. And we know that she's not, at this point, she's not really all that loyal to Marchion. And then actually throughout these issues, he's constantly questioning him, like, at least not directly, but kind of in the background of, would you turn your back on me and you stab me in the back if you're in the same position?
Yeah.
Well, that's a dumb question. Yeah, you would.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think she knows the answer. I mean, she's,
well, no, that was her answer. That was her answer, basically.
Oh, right. Yeah. She answered her own question.
Right.
Yeah. There's no, loss of love there between those two at this point, given everything that's happened. Okay. So, and then this was a part where I was like, oh, wow. Like, again, like in the books, the Nihil are so elusive, right? They come in, they hit and run, and we're always chasing them. We really can't find them. But in the comics, they're right on the tail. Like, and more so here, you've got Sarek, the twin, who's feeling the pains of Tarek, who's being affected by the Nameless. And he basically jumps in the ship and like churns that ship around, and through his bond, right, being able to know where his brother is at any time, starts heading out to the Nihil area, like where they all are. So he takes the ship, turns him around there. He pretty much has gone crazy at this point also. So he's using that presence to kind of guide him to where the Nihil are. And then kind of, and I want to skip ahead just a couple things, but we get to like with Avar, especially right now, and this is going to change in just a little bit. She's still like on this whole don't kill anybody and only attack, if they attack first and that sort of thing. And we talked about this on another show. I forget which one it was, about I guess the nobleness of them, right? And wanting them to preserve life at any cost. And I don't know if that's really the best approach for Jedi to take. I mean, I get it, right? But it doesn't always work out very well for them during this time.
Right. And it was,
And
but this was also very specific, I think, for Sskeer in particular, because I think while we talked about how he's losing his connection to the Force, what we have seen in the very early days of the comic of this series was that Sskeer would all of a sudden rage out and massacre, the beings, Nihil or whoever it might be, just impromptu. It didn't make any sense, and so that's been part of why she's really keeping a close eye on him, and he's a loaded cannon, a loaded gun at this point, and they're very concerned about him even being on missions in general at this point. But so I kind of think that comment was, while still I agree with you entirely, I think it was still very much catered towards Sskeer, and he's a great listener.
well, she makes two comments. She tells
Right.
Sskeer explicitly not to kill anybody, but
Right.
before they get off the ship, she turns around to that, I don't know what it is, like a rat fox looking character. I forget it was. Is it Noon?
Nuran? Yeah,
Yeah.
Nooran. Oh,
And
actually,
the
the
other-
real name's like this long.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
But she turns to them before she gets off the ship, and she's like, don't kill anybody with that unless it's defense. And they're like, yes, ma'am. And then she leaves, and then she gets in Skeer's face and like, look, dude, you need to,
Talking about
I'm looking at you. Stop. You keep going. You're off, you're completely off the handle at this point. You're, reckless, and there's something wrong about you. And I think most of the Jedi too are kind of skeptical of Sskeer at this point because he has done some really questionable things, and he's a Trandoshan, right? Like,
Yeah.
He's
physically
a little
imposing.
edgy.
Well, and the Lourna has seen what he can do too. Again, in an earlier material where he just ripped apart Nihil right in front of her.
Yeah, it was a Tempest Runner.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, Tempest Runner. That's right. Yeah. So
Yeah,
she's seen it.
and I would say
She
she's
wants no part of
she's
it.
intimidated. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
I wouldn't say she's scared, but
I
she
think
knows
that's
and
the
seen what that
one-
guy's done.
Yeah, I think that's the one Jedi where she will measure her aggressiveness very carefully, because he's just a wild card.
Yeah.
And she can't play on the ideals that he'll pull up or that he'll stop short, because she's seen it, and B, he's terrorizing to look at and have breathing down your face.
Yeah. And so, like Jonesy said, he's a pretty good listener. He ends up like blowing a ship out of the sky, and then he sends his lightsaber swirling across the room, killing like 8 people in cold blood. Right.
Pretty awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was really cool stuff what he was doing. Which, yeah. I mean, this is a character I really wish would make the jump as much as Keeve would, and Avar would make the jump back to the novels. I would like to kind of get more from them. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm enjoying the heck out of them in the comic books, but these are such good characters that I feel like people are not connecting with them because they're just not picking up the comics and reading them, which is a shame because that guy is deep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyways, that's what Sskeer does. And then he goes into he gets confronted with Zetar in his little robot suit. And I think does he cut him in half? He does. He cuts the suit in half.
That's the suit in half. Yeah. He's okay.
Yeah. So he's fine because this guy's, I don't know, Zetar is like what, 2 feet tall?
I don't pull up the gonk droid and give me a measurement.
Yeah, I don't know where that is right now, but about the same height. He's pretty tiny. But like I said, he's like a Krang. He's sitting in that thing. So so his little robotic suit is gone, and this is when Lourna sees him and is like, "Okay, we got to get out of here. This guy's crazy. I don't want to mess with him." And she jumps and heads off into a ship to escape. And Keeve at this point then goes and recovers Tarek, who is almost a complete husk by now because he's been exposed to the Nameless for that long. And then it ends on a really cool moment where, and we've already seen this before in the High Republic, where Avar Kriss is using the Force to kind of hold Lourna Dee's ship, and she's pretty much straining the entire time to keep it. And this is, I think, where the cracks start to really kind of show for Avar Kriss, right? Later on, I referenced Lourna Dee as Avar Kriss's white whale, right? Back to the Moby Dick kind of comparison,
Right.
where she's starting to become very obsessed with this idea that, hey, we've got to if we catch Lourna Dee, then Nihil are gone. Similar to in the Clone Wars, where it was like everything's on Dooku, right? If we can get to Dooku and shut him down, then this whole operation, the war's over at that point.
Right. And Grievous as well, yeah.
And Grievous, yeah. So, or maybe it was Grievous, I think, I misspoke. It was Grievous that they were after more than anybody. But nonetheless, the point is, this is the first moment where she started to become obsessed. You can see it in the artwork, right? You can see in her face and just how she's like devouting everything that she can, but she doesn't look at peace anymore. She's starting to look like there's anger creeping in, maybe channeling some of the Elzar man in her as well, to kind of keep Lourna Dee at bay there. But
right, she starts cutting corners a bit, where she like you said, when Dee's trying to escape, she's like, no, this can't happen. Like, we are so close. And that's when you start making concessions with yourself, right? You start to make excuses of why you're going to behave certain ways, because it's like, well, I may not have another chance at this. And she feels like, and again, she is so devout, follower of the Force, if you will.
Yeah.
She just thinks that the Force will provide, but the Force isn't providing enough. And to the point where she's straining against the ship, and she's holding it, but she wants Keeve and Sskeer to help. And they're like, we need to get Tarek to the med bay, because he'll be fine. Or Sskeer can do that. Keeve, come help me. And Skeer's like, she's not in any condition, because Keeve was really in messed up shape. Like, she is in shock, like total shock after this whole event. And she's barely functioning. And, Avar's basically like, she's a Jedi. The Force will provide. I mean, it's bordering on almost like psychotic a little bit.
Yeah.
Of how in some of the images, like you were describing, like the strain on her face, they've got veins popping out of her head. I mean, it's really intense, really intense.
Yep. Yeah. And there's a lot going on with her. I mean, like I said, we don't really get to see that from the novels, but she's dealing with the fact of, she was kind of thrust into this position of being the Marshal of Starlight Beacon. She's at odds. She's been at odds already, and she's going to be at greater odds here in just a little bit with even people like Stella and Geos, but just,
right.
The Republic in general. And, she feels like all the pressure that everybody is expecting her as the hero of Hetzal to go out there and suddenly track down Marquis Rowe, put an end to the Nihil, right? So she's feeling all of this, and at the same time, things just aren't going her way. Like, they keep running into these setbacks. Whether it's Keeve, or whether it's the levelers, or Sskeer going crazy, or there's a lot more disaster here in just a little bit. But it's starting to, like I said, it's starting to really, the pressure's starting to build on her, and she is going to start to crack here very shortly. So let's get into the next issue 12, chapter 2, and this is called The Spirit of Disunity. It starts with kind of a quick flashback, where we learn, and this was kind of in, I guess it was in the Fallen Star as well, that they had actually taken Starlight Beacon and towed it out to the Irem system for, all the relief efforts after the big, what was it, the tsunami or whatever the heck happened there.
Yeah.
And which is interesting. Like, I had wondered about Starlight Beacon and whether or not it had, like, I think we had talked about whether it had like a hyperdrive of some sort.
It does, but I just don't think they're ready yet.
Oh, okay. Was that what it was? Got it.
Yeah,
okay.
I think it's meant to be. I think it's meant to move itself, but it's just not quite there yet.
Okay. Well, that makes sense.
And this was some weird. What was it in that actually described all this, where they actually did the hyperspace towing?
You saying in this High Republic?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what it was. Maybe it was in Eye of the Storm, actually. Well, no, I can't remember. Anyway, they actually do. It's like a weird hyperspace towing type of thing.
Yeah.
Crazy.
But we do get that kind of a flashback, and that becomes a little bit, I guess it becomes significant later, only for like Oberlin of all people, but
right.
maybe more on that later if we remember. So it's a little obscure, but and then we get Avar calls for help first. This is where you mentioned where she's calling for help, and then like there's nobody around. Like Sskeer he has no force abilities, right? Like you said, Keeve is in no state. She just suffered her first contact with the leveler at that point. And really the other Jedi, I mean, I don't know who she was looking for help from, but they didn't take a really large contingent force there. But that in itself is frustrating because she just can't hold that ship on her own. And so that allows Lourna Dee to get away. And I think this is where that obsession really, really starts for her.
Absolutely. And I think it's one of those things where she feels like you said, everything's on her shoulders. And now she's starting to almost blame others that, if you were just more like this, or if you were just
Mm-hmm.
helping me, if you would just make these decisions, if you just follow my directions. And I'm exaggerating a little bit, but you feel like it's just right below the surface with her that she's really close to just breaking that, breaking the skin on that, and to where she will just erupt. And we know later on she kind of does, right, with Stellan. And so it's just again, everything is mounting on her, and they're all exhausted. The Jedi haven't had to be in this position where they have, well, never fought like a year-long war effectively, right?
You're right.
And they're all mentally exhausted, and they're a bit at odds as to what to do about it all, because they're starting to fracture a bit as to what they believe is the right thing to do, and
Mm-hmm.
who should be doing it. And then you got folks like Avar, who's deciding that, well, I need to be the one to go do this. And I think it's a lot of hubris on her part, because I think she actually believes that she is the greatest Jedi in the order. I really, later on when we get a Stella Maru, I really feel like that was what she was kind of trying to get at, and maybe Maru corroborated a little bit. But
Well,
anyway, I
I
kind
think
of feel
people,
like that's where she's going, though.
yeah, I know. I think people see her as that. Like, I mean, yeah, I mean, on one
Sure.
hand, she is the hero of Hetzal, but I think a lot of people do look up to her. I think they kind of talked a little bit about it in Light of the Jedi, but at the very end of this whole series, the last issue, when we get Keeve Trennis's perspective on Avar Chris and just how much she looks up to her.
Yeah.
I mean, she can't. I mean, part of it is, yeah, she's an amazing Jedi, but at the same time, if you've got people constantly telling you that you are amazing, and then they look up to you, and I mean that is a lot of pressure, right? And how do you balance all of that? And when in if they weren't in a time of war, she's probably okay, right? But this is something that she's not used to, and it's just it's a number of fronts that are coming together that are really kind of weighing on her. I'm making excuses for my woman here, okay? Let's just be honest,
No,
right?
no, I
That's what
mean,
I'm
but
doing.
we saw it with Stellan too, right? And we have to question about whether or not she feels like she's ever had a choice.
Yeah, right.
Stellan feels like his path has more or less been laid out in front of him, which I think was overly simplistic, but
Hmm.
I see his point. And I can imagine that Avar feels much the same way. And Elzar, of all people, had a lot more flexibility, because he was kind of not the runt, but he was kind of the misfit of the three, right?
Yeah.
So expectations on him were much lower when you had those two front and center. And I think it weighs on you after a long time. And these guys are in their, I'm guessing, 20s or probably 30s, I guess, right?
Maybe. I don't know. I don't think we've ever gotten ages. My guess is he's probably the middle child, right? He's the bad boy.
Right.
You
Right.
know, Avar or Selin was the oldest, and Avar was the youngest, so they had all the privileges. But that little Elzar man guy in the middle there just never got any love. So that's why he's a little darker. So we flash back to Starlight Beacon, and this is a really interesting aspect that I really wish they would have explored a little bit more. And I'm probably going to oversimplify this, but so the plan at this point is, okay, Lourna Dee got away. We need to find the Nihil. We're at, like, event horizon. We've got to do this now, or it's never, kind of thing. And so and I don't remember, they don't really reference where they got the path engine from, but they've somehow, or do you
It was
know,
from, oh my gosh, yeah, they do mention where they got it from, but it
or you
wasn't
think
anything.
about that,
Okay, I'll think about it.
or look it up.
Yes.
But no, so they get a path engine, and they slap it on the back of I think it's the Anoraxia, if I'm not mistaken. Um, and now they have a way, because the path engine has these pre-programmed paths of through no space or hyperspace or whatever, to go out to the main base, right, where all of the Nihil are hanging out. So they put that on the back of it, and I kind of wish they would explore this a little bit more. Like, to me, it seems like if that's a sure thing, which now probably in hindsight, now where we are at the end of phase one, maybe doesn't make a lot of sense. But rather than blowing these ships out of the sky, and incapacitate the ships and take the path drives and start outfitting them with, on the Jedi ships, and allow that would be a way for them to kind of always be able to find the Nihil. So again, I may be oversimplifying the process, but essentially that's exactly what they do to head back out to find Lourna Dee.
Right. In the meantime, though, what has happened a little bit before this is that Sskeer has been basically relieved of duty, because Avar was so angry at both him and Keeve, And then she saw what he did. She's like, you defied my orders. You didn't do what you were told. You recklessly killed, your lightsaber, please. And he hands it off to her, and basically he's suspended of all actions until he can be judged by the Jedi Tribunal. And which again, it's just, you can see it breaks her heart at the same time. But again, she's losing grip. She's losing that grip and traction on, who she is and what she believes in, because she can't get over the frustration. She's just taking on anybody that's around her. But now we've basically sidelined Sskeer, which of course derails Keeve even more, because Keeve feels she's like been abandoned by her master, but she kind of needs to be there for her master. And then Avar is someone she looks up to, but she's kind of off her rails. And so Keeve is just, I'm just trying to figure out what the heck I experienced and, pull myself together. And she's a bit alone in this way now. And so it's kind of a tough time for all of the characters. But yeah, and you were right. It was the Ataraxia they were attaching it to, and the text is too small, so I didn't see what the name of the planet was.
Oh, okay. All right.
It was not Valo or anything like that. It was some other place.
Yeah, I don't remember where they went to. I thought I had it down here somewhere. I think it's a little bit further down in the show notes. Not important. Okay, so here's where we get the a scene that I didn't think we would ever really honestly get, and that's just
the Battle of Galuf. They give us the
Galuf?
planet, but they give us the battle name.
Okay. Well, thank you.
It was gonna kill me. I had to keep looking.
So okay, so we get this between Stella and Geos and Avar Chris, it feels like that relationship was pretty healthy. Never thought that they would ever kind of get into any kind of a little spiff or spat, but nonetheless, in Stellan's eyes, Avar has become completely obsessed. She's leaving to go after Lourna Dee, and in his mind, in the mind of a lot of people on Starlight Beacon, she's abandoning her post. She's supposed to be there. She's supposed to be the marshal and kind of running everything top to bottom. Not running everything, but at least the law enforcement or the Jedi enforcement. And she's not. And people are starting to feel like this is starting to get very personal, right? Like this is a personal thing now for you. You've, again, like you said, gone off the rails. And so they go back and forth about it. I think Avar it almost feels like Avar's got, she's revenge in her mind. But there's an interesting quote in there where she says they attacked the Jedi instead of saying they attacked the Republic. So not only is she taking it personally for herself, but she's looking at it from the perspective of they're only really after the Jedi. Like there's like and she's probably right to some extent. If you think about where Markion Rosehead's at, he seems more inclined to do wrong to the Jedi than necessarily the Republic. They just have to be a byproduct of his, nefarious plans. But she sees this and she is very defensive of that, right? As again, this person that people look up to, she's kind of like she sees herself as one of the leaders. And so in that regard, she is taking it personal for the sake of the Jedi and not so much the Republic, which, kind of goes against the grain of what the Jedi should be doing.
Yeah, and I wonder if I wanted to ask you this question: if that comment was more inclined around the hubris of Jedi, like we're a step above, and actually we're above the Republic in that way too. I agree with you that I think Markion Road definitely, the Jedi are the true threat because they're the wild card, right? They can do things and they can organize themselves in ways that the Republic cannot.
Mm-hmm.
But do the Jedi? There are some Jedi who, we've seen this in other areas of Star Wars, but do we have this with Avar starting to subscribe to that theory maybe as well?
I wouldn't, and honestly, at this point, just the amount of stress, like there's a part of me that thinks that Avar Chris does feel like she is better than others. I don't know what it is about it. Maybe that's what I like her. That's why we like each other so much. But
I thought it was because she was blonde. But okay.
Well, that's another one too, right? I have a thing for blondes, but I think that's part of it. I think it definitely is. It's probably manifesting now more than ever because of the stress she's under as well. But the second part of that whole, without losing all of the context there, she does talk about the being spooked by the weapon, right? She knows that there's a weapon out there that affects Jedi as well. So in that regard, I think she's looking at it from, hey, the Republic can't defend themselves. And yeah, maybe there's a hint of because you're not good enough, but at the same time, someone needs to defend you guys. And it can't be us right now. It may not be able to be us because we are being targeted. We're being attacked. So, I mean, her intentions are good, right? I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but she's definitely, she's definitely skewing that, JW just brought it up right now. We're all the Republic, right? It's like all pigs are equal, but some pigs are more equal than others kind of thing from Animal Farm. Same type of scenario here. We're all the Republic, but some of us are more of the Republic than others. There you go. So thank you. And then he's gonna look at him. He can't get over Captain Bright here.
That's a name I haven't heard in a while.
From Light of the Jedi. Never forget, man. This guy is like I think he's got a Twitter account that he uses to that's just like a dedicated Captain Bright memorial. So all right. That's a deep cut. Okay, and then we get quickly on the twins. Now they're kind of in this, I guess they're like we talked about. Now they're both in this like hibernation trance where they're like half husk, half not a husk.
Yeah, they're still physically there. They're not crumbling or anything like that. But yeah, they're both in this like hibernation stasis or something like that.
Yeah, these guys are like, they must have like 9 lives or 18 since there's 2 of them, because it feels like every comic book they were like on the verge of death or on the brink of death, and it was just and I thought, oh, they're done, they're gone. Nope, they're still even now they are still around.
Yeah, the Drengir had their way with them for a while.
Yeah, exactly. The Drengir have had their way with them. They've been through the Nameless now, and we joke about Sskeer being kind of like that puppet or dummy punching bag crash test dummy for Gavin Scott. It really is Tarek and Sarek more than anybody, but
I think so.
But yeah, they're kind of and it's the way they explained it is their mind is lost. Like they've got pulses, they're alive, but they're not there. Like they're completely spaced out because of what the trauma that they've gone through now with the Nameless, which I wonder if, no, go ahead.
Oh yeah, if you were to look at them, or Avar, they look like they were dead. I mean, and Avar's like, they are just barely there. But, and again, what Sarah said before they actually, passed out and all of that was that he was trying to describe it for them. And it wasn't like there was nothing. It was like, there is void. Like there is just a void. There is nothing with the Nameless. And that freaks them out. I mean, if you're afraid of the dark, imagine like being awake, but you are completely in the dark and something is feeding on you.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just kind of how it is without the Force there. And then you feel, especially with this weird twin bond they have, that was not intentional twin, sorry. but this, the twin bond is it just exacerbates that whole experience, that feeling that they have. And I just like the word choice with void, because that's very much what's left, because there's no presence in the Force. We learned that from the Trail of Shadows.
Mm-hmm.
There's not even a midichlorian count left.
Oh, look at that. Invoking the midichlorians, the middies.
Yeah, there's no M count.
There's no M count. Okay, so a very interesting development now. So Stella Maru, we talked about him earlier, who is, for anybody that doesn't know, because really hasn't been in the books much either, he's kind of like he's like the operations guy on Starlight Beacon from the Jedi perspective. So he's kind of running everything. He's central command, if you will. But he's kind of an overwatcher. Right? He watches everyone and kind of cares for everybody as well. But he approaches Keeve at this point, is like, hey, I don't know about her. Like, she's going off the rails, like we said. Let me just read the quote. It says, "I fear she is allowing her emotions to govern her path. First, her anger that she was kept from Valo, and now this. She is not listening to any of us. She is not listening to the Force." So you've got somebody who is, again, feels the weight and the burden and the responsibility of what happened at Valo, and not being a part of that, especially coming off the high and how she was able to contribute during, the great disaster, right? Then she's obsessed with Lourna Dee, and, Lourna Dee literally slipping through her fingers there. And Maru's like, hey, this is, she's not listening to us. She's not listening to the Force. She's pretty much on her own at this point. And so, of all people, he tags Keeve Trennis, who's still very young, right? Perspectively here, to go and start watching over Avar Kriss, because he's worried that she's going to cross the path and potentially do something horribly wrong. And so this is his check and balance for her.
Right. I mean, and I think it's not a bad move. When I thought about it initially, I was like, why would they give it to someone so young? But I think there's kind of two reasons for that. Is one, Keeve is not, she's not a rollover. I mean, she's got skills and she's legit. I mean, she's
Hmm.
good. She's like Vernestra Rowe, but with more experience good. Right.
Yeah.
But I think the other thing though is that sometimes you need, when you're a master, I mean, this was the other rebel. Okay. Well, she's just a knight, a relatively young knight, with a seasoned Jedi master. Sometimes the teacher needs that perspective that the student gives. I mean, this has come up time and time again, right? From Last Jedi to to everything we've seen in High Republic and in a number of other places. And so sometimes you need that perspective to be brought back onto you. And it's not necessarily that naive perspective that you see the world through the eyes of a child type of thing, but it's more sometimes they remember the lines a little bit better than we will, because after we've been, our experiences and everything start to erode our, our sense of how far we're willing to go. And while Keeve, I think, understands that, at the same time, she can also bring that back for Avar potentially. And that's what Maru's hoping that'll happen, is that because Stellan's not getting through to her. If Stellan can't get through her and the council can't get through to her, and Sskeer, she's completely turned her back on and basically fired. Like, literally, who else is there that could really do it except for, a former student or someone that she also was very happy for Keeve and very proud of Keeve as well, where she came from. So there's a definite level of respect there as well for her abilities and who she is.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. I hadn't really looked at it that way, other than, I kind of took the more shallow approach of like, she's too young. But yeah, it sounds like it.
Well, that, and she was there. So, I mean,
And
they
there
were
wasn't a lot
people.
to pick from, honestly. Let's just be real here. But yeah, no, we shouldn't take anything away from her in her ability. So it's a good choice, and it proves to be the right choice a little bit later.
Right.
And then the comic does a really cool, interesting thing here at the very end, but it does the flashback, and we kind of alluded to this and talked about it already. But we get the flashback of what happened, like you said, after Sskeer went and killed all those people, and Avar scolded him and takes his lightsaber away and says he's not a Jedi. She says her actions were not worthy of a Jedi.
Right.
Yeah, that's the kettle calling, or whatever. And then pending the judgment of the council, right? We'll see whether or not he sticks around. And Keeve is like, pleading to him, like, I need him, right? It's the only person that she's got really left. I mean, this is her master, and everything else seems to be falling apart, including him. So, of course, she doesn't want this. And that it's a really quick scene, but we go back to kind of present day, and where Keeve walks in and wants to talk to Sskeer about what's going on. And the really cool part about this is we finally get, again, what are we in, comic number 12 now? And I think it started in comic 2, or maybe when we first found out that he was kind of losing his connection with the Force.
Yeah,
We finally,
right away.
yeah. So we finally get to learn that this is it's kind of a genetic disorder. It's a rare disease that impacts Trandoshans. And here's the part, and you're better at picking up on this stuff than I am, but I wasn't sure if this was a genetic disorder that was happening to Trandoshans and was it somehow affecting the Force, or was it just the fact that it was causing him to regress and be aggressive and full of fury and rage, and because of that was forcing him to lose his connection with the Force?
Yeah, it was a bit unclear. It sounded more like the latter. It sounded like as he started to go back to more of a primal state,
Mm-hmm.
that basically you don't have the capacity to connect with the Force. You don't have the ability. You might be able to do it innately, but you don't have although they don't describe it that way, but this is how I kind of reconcile in my head,
Yeah.
is that while you might have Force like, be able to touch, like, so animals can touch the Force, but it doesn't mean that they're, quote unquote, intelligent, walking and talking and making decisions and right and wrong and things like that, right? And so that's how I viewed it, as when he gets more primal, while there might be a connection to the Force, I think that may have been simplification, but he won't be able to wield it and control it and call on it on demand. But he's again, mentally, he'll start to lose all idea of who is who and what is what. It's almost like having Alzheimer's to an extent, but also going back to more of a feral, type of being.
And you're right, because I just found it, actually. I didn't even catch this. It says my mind has been my mind has subconsciously
Well done.
has been subconsciously dealing with the condition, but the effort required. And then Keeve finishes the sentence by saying, has left you unable to connect to the force. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's like you said, that condition is impacting his ability to kind of control and rationalize the force. And it's, he's kind of he's a risk at this point, and that's how he sees himself. So he's almost thinking this is kind of maybe this is all for the better that I don't do this because I'm putting you at risk and everybody else at risk at this point.
Again, she makes a plea for him. This is not what I need. Yeah, I need
Yeah.
my master. I need someone that you are a Jedi. Be a Jedi. I mean, this is where like Keeve is like, I'm not the grown up around here. Why am I having to be the grown up around here to all you people?
Mhm.
So all of a sudden she's having to take this leadership role with people that were her mentors and teachers, and she's just beside herself. She's like, what is going on? Like, who are these people now? And it's just everything is upside down.
Yeah. And that it sticks because I mean she pretty much calls him out and says you are a Jedi and can't believe it's almost like I guess my father truly is dead kind of moment, right?
It was that backhand
Luke
kids.
Skywalker kick to the nuts kind of comment. And it works because later on they're getting ready to take off, and guess who shows up? It's Sskeer, and he's all in his he's got his Jedi garb on,
his regalia and everything. Yeah, looking all.
And he gets in the face of Avar Chris, not aggressively, but is like, hey, until a decision's made, I am a Jedi, and I don't have the Force, but I'm
I'll do my.
You don't have anybody else either, so,
right? Yeah,
I'm coming along with you.
She didn't say anything. She was like, all right.
Yep.
Oh no, she looked at Keeve. She's like, well, he's your responsibility then.
Yeah.
Anything.
Yeah, you got to keep an eye on him. So
and then she actually says that. She goes, well, if he gets out of line, I'll kick him on his scaly ass.
Yeah, and he says, and she will.
Like, yeah, she will.
Right. It's unfortunate that we don't. Well, I shouldn't say. I don't want to cover. It's good that we brought that moment up because it is cool. But there are lots of other moments like this. You would do yourself a favor to read the comic because we're touching all the big important stuff. But there's just little moments like that are just really good writing and good character development. And there's some lighter sides to it, believe it or not. Like that whole relationship between Sskeer and Keeve.
It's fantastic.
It's so cool. We didn't even talk about.
Sskeer has a sense of humor. If you
he does, yeah, no, 100%. So it's good. That's why I said I really wish they would make it into the larger books because I think more people would really love what they have, the dynamic between those two.
Great.
Okay, well, let's get into issue 13, chapter 3, and this is the Battle of No Space, and we start now in the Great Hall, which we all know is kind of where the Nihil like to hang out. It's kind of like their base of operations. It's considered no space, which you can only get there with a hyperdrive or one of the path drives. And by the way, they left in the anorexia with that path drive attached to the back of it.
All right, and they know it's at because of the computer that was attached to the ship. So that's why they know what no space is in the Great Hall. So that they've got some information there.
Yep. And this is where you get to see some of the inner strife that's happening among the Tempest Runners because Zetar's like, we're the Jedi are right on our tails. We barely got away. I got cut in half, and where the heck is Ro? Like he's nowhere to be found. He's completely radio silent. And this is where Lourna Dee's like, yeah, sucks, dude, but this is been here before. And she makes a comment about it. I think you'll, Markion Ro, I think you'll always do what you do, Markion. You'll chart your own course and to hell with the rest of us, right? And that's kind of in that she's not wrong. That's exactly what he does.
He just kind of smirks at it.
Yep. And so the Jedi show up, and of course, Zetar wants to run. I mean, that's probably his first instinct. And Lourna, of course, is a complete opposite. She wants to just take it on, head on. And so they decide that they're going to stick around and fight the Jedi who showed up. So,
and this is where things start not going so great.
For who though? Who do you think?
For anybody.
Yeah, it all kind of starts to unravel.
The Nihil are quite on the receiving end of a lot of this, but when you look at the Jedi, you're not feeling too great about them either.
Yeah. So the Jedi basically, I mean, they essentially are doing what the Nihil do. They evade that ship. They blow a hole in the side there, short of the gas.
And they were, I think before they were saying though, well, they had the ship come out. They're like, what is that? And I was like, it's definitely not. And they knew what it was at first sight. They're like, well, okay, well, we have time because they're Jedi and they never fire first. And then, bam, 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 bam,
Boom.
bam.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the Jedi just start, they're like, huh, well, that was unexpected.
Yep.
And then, yeah, they basically a boarding party and start blowing the doors in.
Yeah, I mean, they literally forced their way onto the ship where the Nihil have kind of taken up space and defense. And it's cool, too.
Such a cool page, too.
Yeah, I was just looking at it, too. Like, right before they come in, there is a shot of all the Nihil, and they're kind of standing there watching that door, waiting, and you can't help but think of Episode 4, that opening scene where Vader comes through with the stormtroopers. It's exactly like that, which is really cool. But then when they actually do melt the door open, I mean, they use their lightsabers to kind of cut through. It's a cool shot because you got Avar Kriss standing in the middle, Sskeer's in the back, you've got Keeve Trennis coming through it, and then one of the other people that's going to die here.
That's going to die.
Yeah, he comes through as well.
Yeah,
he's fine.
Yeah, Newer.
Is that Newer?
I think that's Newer.
Nor or whatever. Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so Avar Kriss comes in and she's like, take no prisoners. Like I don't know what happened because to be honest, like at the very end of when they take off in that last issue, like there was some tongue in cheek there and she was smiling and they were having a joke about, Keeve putting, dude on his butt if he got out of line. And then like as soon as she gets in here, it's like she's completely changed. Like she's reverted back to this crazy obsessed person with the Nihil saying things like, take no prisoners. And
she said, take them. And then Keeve says, take them prisoner, right, Marshall?
Right.
And she got no response.
Yeah. No.
Well, the response was hack and slash. I mean, from like Elzar Man style.
Yeah.
Shoulder to hip.
Diagonal.
On more than one.
Yep.
It was insane.
Yeah, she's just cutting people down left and right. And again, they're the aggressors. They're the ones that have boarded the ship. And then poor little Zetar, right? He lost his little suit. So the only thing he really had left was like some kind of it's like a flamethrower kind of thing that he put on there. And so he's got this tank of gas on the allegedly in the back.
This is where the visual was not real clear what happened.
Oh, he's dead.
Really stared at. Oh yeah. So yeah, Avar uses the Force to crush the tank, and it explodes.
Yep.
I mean, when I was reading this issue when it first came out, I texted Albert. I was like, "Your girl has lost it. Like she gone."
Yeah, I was just looking here. It says, "I love that they call them Jays too. I know we've talked about that before, but they call the Jedi the Jays." But yeah, she says she remembers him, and then next thing you know, it's like explosion, like all through his guts are flying out. I mean, they don't show that, but I mean,
well, no, he's on fire too. Yeah.
Oh yeah, he's yeah, exactly. He's laying there, and she just very nonchalantly just walks over his dead corpse and keeps on going. So yeah, her and Elzar Man have a lot to talk about here post the Fallen Star, which is going to be. I hope we get some of that too.
Hope so.
2
more years.
Yeah, and of course now Keeve, remind you, Keeve was like championed with making sure that Avar Kriss didn't step out of line, and she's really starting to question her judgment. And they get it. Like she confronts her about it. Like, this is not you've gotten out of hand. Like this needs to stop. And Avar pushes back, and we get them fighting for the first time. Now, granted,
she straight up like turns around and wields down on her.
Oh, like, you're saying Avar does?
Yeah, Avar to Keeve. Yeah.
Yep.
She's like, you need to know your role, young one.
Yeah,
you will know your place.
And so they get into a fight. And I don't know what else there's to say other than it's pretty quick. They do lock lightsabers, and then of course they're talking, and she's really kind of being the voice of reason, the voice of she's Keeve being the voice of reason, being the voice of conscience, and Avar Kriss really doesn't want any of it. But she does best her in combat. Like she ends up doing like a force push. Meanwhile, the Nihil are still, there's gas all around them the entire time. And, right in the middle of this, when they're both kind of trying to take each other down, Lourna Dee walks in. And I don't know where she got this from. Like, I don't remember them ever talking about this.
So this was because remember, so in this issue, just a few pages before all this, Zetar was saying that his suit's not ready. She goes, "You're Nihil."
Oh, it's supposed to be that suit? Okay, I got it.
Yeah, so I guess he was repairing it or he had one. And so he didn't have the confidence. So we have Lourna Dee comes out in this giant mech suit, again, which was really big. and said, Zedar should really have more confidence in his abilities
Yeah.
and in his work. And she has like this like laser type of sword as well. It was very intimidating.
hmm Um. So they get into it now. So now you've got Avar Chris fighting Lourna Dee in this kind of battle suit, and she's wielding. Lourna Dee's got like a, I don't know what that is. It's
It's
not a
like some weird
lightsaber.
red laser sword type of thing.
Yeah, I mean, there's in Star Wars, there's plenty of these. They've happened before. But again, you got to remember. So at this point, Lourna Dee is still public enemy number one, and in Avar Chris's mind, this is the Eye of the Storm. And there's a cool moment. There's a cool picture in here where you get to see, Lourna Dee in her helmet, the way that's drawn, and then next thing you've got Avar Chris doing the same thing. But they are ready to. I mean, this is like the showdown that she's been waiting for, and of course she ends up winning in this battle. And the way she does it, and I'll just jump ahead here because I think it's just kind of the battle. But I don't know that.
Well, Lorna kind of won the fight.
Yeah, no, she did until she
Well, yeah.
releases the Force.
Right. Yeah. What was she going to do? Oh, she was going to strike down. I'm trying to remember why she did it though.
Why Lourna Dee did that?
No.
Oh, because no, Avar Chris,
Avar.
because so Lourna Dee pulls a Marquis on Roe. She commands the troops to start shooting her own people, right? Because at that point, and this is like the ships. So Lourna Dee calls all of the Nihil ships that are floating around on the outside there, and they start shooting the ship that they're on.
Well, they were going to destroy the Great Hall. Yeah.
Yeah, the whole thing was coming down. And that's
right.
when she goes, "You're going to fire on your old people or whatever." And she goes, "Well, if it means winning." So Lourna Dee is like, "I'm in this to win it at any cost. I don't care who lives or who dies." And to some extent, you got to understand, like, she's so done with the Nihil, right? Like, the whole Marquis on Roe and the backstabbing, and, you think about everything she went through in Tempest Runner. These are, to me, it feels like these are people that are a means to an end, but she has no love for any of these people, right? She could care less. And it's different than it's a different way though than what Marquis on Roe approaches that same kind of I don't know, approach, I guess.
At this point, we kind of felt like Keeve was making progress with Avar as well, to where Avar was starting to kind of snap back into reality of like, okay, yeah, maybe I have started to push things too long until this moment where it's just too much. It's just too much. And Avar actually says sorry to Keeve right before. It's actually a really cool like image. She takes the Force. She's laying down on the ground. She got pushed back, and Lorna's right on top of her, and she's like, "I'm so sorry." And then she just uses the Force and completely obliterates the suit, and shoves Lourna Dee against the wall in the back, and knocks her down and out. It was an incredible force of exhibition of the Force.
Yeah, I mean, this is like old Republic stuff, or Force Unleashed stuff, right?
Yeah,
the ability
it really
for
was.
the ability for somebody to wield the Force in this manner, and part of it is likely because she was channeling some level of anger or emotion, given everything that was going on, given her talent. I mean, she's arguably one of the strongest, if not, she is definitely one of the strongest Jedi that are in this era, given what we saw her able to do and her ability to kind of connect everybody. But again, like, so this is, she's in this to win it as well. Like, she really wants to ensure that Lourna Dee does not get away at this point. And so after, she's fallen out, Lourna Dee has come out of the suit and is sitting there kind of shell shocked about what happened. She asks her, do you yield? She doesn't answer. Do you surrender? She still doesn't answer. And then Lourna Dee whips around with Tarek's sword. Like, she has that lightsaber. And so then they start kind of getting into, a little lightsaber battle there for all of about 2 seconds until she finally crosses the line and lobs off Lourna Dee's left hand after, I think it was, she says, "How dare you?" And it's in response to the fact that she's seen Lourna Dee use this Jedi weapon now, and like, this was the final straw. Like, she can't even wrap her head around the fact that it's gone this far, and she wants to put an end to it. So, really powerful moment. We finally get somebody that loses a limb in the High Republic. Unfortunately, it has to be Lourna Dee.
Well, then we get
visual.
One of the darkest set of lines I think we've had in a while, and maybe all of High Republic adventure from Avar Chris.
Yeah.
It's a
So,
really dark moment.
well, yeah, and because you think about earlier on, I think it was in Light of the Jedi, or no, it was in the comics. It was in like issue number 1 or whatever when they were doing the celebratory christening of the Starlight Beacon, right?
Right.
She calls upon that and she says, "I made a covenant long ago, a covenant to anyone who could hear my voice. I said we would be a beacon of darkness, that we would protect those who were afraid, and you made me a liar." But I don't do that line justice, honestly. It's like Jonesy said, like you can see it in her eyes. Like she doesn't even have like pupils the way they drew her, right? She's got like
Oh, she's
whited
standing
out
up.
eyes.
Her eyes. I mean, when there's one image, I think a page later, where the top of her down to her nose is like shaded, and it's just so eerie. I mean, it captured the quote in the visualization of it just absolutely perfectly.
Yeah. And then she continues on, like she's already got this
I'm getting
evil look in her
goosebumps
eyes.
just thinking about it. Actually, I'm not even lying.
She's like she doubles down. She says maybe words are not longer. Maybe words are no longer enough. Maybe a new covenant must be made.
Oh boy.
And this is where like Keeve is on the ground, and it completely gets her attention. Like holy crap, what's about to happen? And she says a covenant that never will be broken. And she pulls up her lightsaber, and we end on this iconic page. I think now it's like one of these moments, for at least for me, especially in the High Republic, that you'll never forget, where you've got Keeve Trennis now Avar Kriss now standing over Lourna Dee. Lourna Dee's on her knees. She's missing her left hand.
Holding
She
a
looks
stump. Yeah.
holding a little stump. I mean, in pain.
Terrified.
Looks like she's scared. And Avar Kriss is saying for light and life. Like she's using that slogan, that motto,
So perverse. Yeah.
in a way that was never intended. She's completely and this is where she's kind of really bottomed out, in terms of where she's at. And you've got Keeve Trennis standing behind her, screaming no, because she knows what's about to happen. And I honestly thought at this point she was going to do it. Like I was already had my thoughts, or at least I was already starting to feel like Avar Kriss was really getting a little too far off the edge here. But when I saw this one, I mean, this was the longest 30 days to wait to see if she actually did it. So,
And this was the moment that I was hooked, like with this arc, because they were actually going down this path where, I mean, there's no return if this happens.
Yeah.
Well, I say that Elzar seems to have 19,000 lives here, but but for Avar Kriss to do this is completely different than an Elzar, and this would break the Jedi. I think. I mean, I think this would really break the Jedi, and it would break Keeve, and everything that they look up to, this individual and what she means, and that's why, like for the title card choice for this week, there was only one option, and it was
I didn't even realize that.
Yeah,
yeah.
Because I mean, it's just the intensity of it is just incredible. Because you're like, there's just no way she can do this, right? There's no way she can do this. Yet, when we get to issue 14, can we just get into issue 14 now?
Yeah, no. So issue 14, chapter 4, is The Edge of Destruction. And do you want more of a segue? But
nope. So we'll just continue this. So she actually swings down. Yeah. So she actually goes through with the swing, and Keeve pushes off with the force and jumps right in front of her. And somehow Avar, because of the way they drew this, like she was going with all of her might, and somehow she stops herself before slashing into Keeve instead of Lourna. So she was, and this is why I messaged you about it, because like, dude, she went. I mean, she went all in. Like she's crossed the line, even though she didn't make the kill.
Right.
She made the decision.
She was committed. Yeah.
Yeah. The choice was made. The covenant was made. I mean, and Keeve, even if Keeve would have taken the hit instead of Lourna, it would have, I mean, she had to save Avar from herself in the situation. But I was just beside myself. I was like, there's no way. I was like, is she going to do it? She's got to do it. And then she did. I was like, no, she can't do it. I was like, you all of a sudden.
Yeah. It was,
because you told me she wasn't going to do it. You're like, nah, she'll be all right. We're not talking right now, but it's going to be fine.
Yeah. I didn't think she would do it.
It wasn't fine.
Yeah, I didn't think she would do it. I thought that she would come to her senses, or something else would happen. But it's sad that it took Keeve Trennis almost sacrificing her own life for Lourna Dee of all people, right? I mean,
Yeah.
to kind of wake her up. And in that moment when she stops, there's a really like a cool close up on her eyes, and you can see she's got like tears in her eyes, like her eyes are watering because she's just so emotional and so angry. And again, it all kind of led up to this moment. So
Right.
really good stuff that she's going to have to contend with here, going into phase 3 for sure. This comic also opens up with kind of a quick flashback, and we won't spend a whole lot of time on this one, but just so that Sskeer is out there, and Newell or whatever that dude's name is, he's about to die here soon. Goonral is another one. He's another Jedi that's out there, but they're all kind of fighting the Nihil off. But I guess the big takeaway here is they're all still trying to keep the Nihil alive. There's a moment there where the Nihil almost get jettisoned out into space, and they stop them from going out into space. And the Nihil are like, "Why did you save our lives? Like, this doesn't make any sense. We were just trying to kill you." And the answer is because we're Jedi. We strive for life, never death. So even up until this moment, they're still trying to be take the high road with everything else that's going on.
Right.
And so going back to Keeve and Avar Chris, you've got now Lourna Dee, who's ever the opportunist, standing or sitting behind Keeve Trennis because, Keeve just jumped in front of her. And so what does she do? She naturally takes her lightsaber and takes Keeve Trennis almost as a hostage, to kind of get away at that point. And I'm trying to think where they go from here. I'm just going to fast forward here. Oh, yeah. So this is
She shoves her. Yeah.
yeah, she shoves her with the Force. So like Avar's still persistently trying to get to her, even though I wouldn't say she had a disregard for Keeve's life, but it was still a high risk move that I don't know that I would have taken, given how how close that lightsaber blade was to Keeve Trennis's throat. I mean, it's like right on her throat at that point.
Was.
Yeah. But that, I think that sends her unconscious, and this is the final. You realize, okay, they've actually got Lourna Dee now. They've officially captured her at this point, because after she hits the wall, she goes and doesn't wake up for a little bit here. There was a cool moment too where they were talking, and this has come up before, where Lourna Dee is talking to Avar Chris about the Jedi's weakness in this time at this point is the mercy, whereas Avar Chris sees it as a strength. And I don't know, like to some extent, I do feel like the level of mercy does feel like a weakness for the Jedi during this era. And this gets back to the whole balancing thing, right? With like Luke and Ahsoka Tano, and at least what we perceive as is their take on the Force. But again, it does feel like it is a little too naive at this time.
Well, I think it's how far are you willing to take that to where you will sacrifice something in the name of your own belief system? I mean, not your own belief system, but their own. Oh my gosh, this whole light side, dark side type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we've seen examples where like Porter Engle, of course, in Light of the Jedi, you didn't want to kill, but he did. And we've seen lots of examples of it where the Jedi will, and they can feel bad about it, but they still do it. But this was very different, though, and I think the idea of mercy, though, was like we had in the other part of the Great Hall, where the other Jedi are saving the Nihil, even though they don't deserve it. I think there's one thing: if someone with a lightsaber to your neck, I mean, there's a certain extent of, okay, well, are you willing to put aside your ideals to protect someone? If every life is precious and one Jedi life is not the same as sacrificing a civilian, well, is the life of someone who's willing to sacrifice that civilian greater than that civilian, greater than your connection to the light side? I mean, this is a huge circular reference, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of who is more right and more justified and more, I don't know, just
important,
worthy,
worthy
of sorts, right? So it's a, they struggle with it. I get it. I mean, it's a tough place to be if you're so worried about going down the dark side. And again, this is why fear is so prevalent with the Jedi. They're so afraid of falling to the dark side. And it's no different in this era than it has been in every other era. And so it's something they still don't really want to address head on, I think. And they try at times, but they always kind of turn their shoulder and turn their head on at the end of the day.
Yeah. Well, and on that note, we get a very cool moment between Keeve and Avar, where I think Keeve shows a lot of maturity here and a really good
Yeah.
understanding, like fundamental understanding of the Force that gets through to Avar Chris for the first time in all of this. Maybe that and the fact that now Lourna Dee is in custody, but
Right.
I don't want to take anything away from Keeve's moment. But she says not everyone can be perfect all the time, not even you. And I think that's the problem, right? Like we said earlier, I think her expectations from her and other people is that she is perfect. And Keith goes on to say that none of us are infallible. And it's then that Avar picks up the rest of that line by saying, thinking we are only leads to the dark side. And then she gives her kudos for being so smart. And of course, Keeve credits Sskeer for kind of being the reason why she is who
They're
she
all
is.
high-fiving out of the way of the Great Hall and everything. It was very similar to the Stellan Geos discussion in Fallen Star, right?
Yeah, good point.
There was
Yep.
some parallels to that one.
Yep. Okay, and so they have their, hallmark moment there. And they then jump back into the ship and they head to Starlight Beacon, unaware of what's going on. So they're heading to the Irem system. And as they come out of hyperspace, Chris immediately can feel that something's not right. She doesn't know what it is, but something's definitely wrong.
You think that was the ship was going to explode, or you think it was like the levelers, or just yes?
Yeah,
Everything.
no, I think it was probably, knowing her, it was probably all of that, really. But I think there
Yeah,
was
true. The song was probably dissonant or changing or something.
it was
Right?
skipping, yeah. Or what would be the term for that?
Oh,
I don't know.
I mean, with a record, that's what it would do. Scratch.
Yep, the record scratch is what it was. Um, and then we get Keeve and Sskeer finally coming together and talking about what's going on, and she's so concerned with him, and he's like, kind of, and we see this with plenty of other Jedi, especially in this era more than anything. But this whole idea of, hey, you need to go on your own path. Like, my life is not your destiny, and for Keeve, it's very hard for her to separate this, right? It's hard for her to just disconnect from him. And they're having a really poignant moment. And again, this is where the comedy fits in, because Lourna is like standing there imprisoned, listening, having to listen to these two go on real sappy about each other and how much they love each other. And she's like, makes a comment about, like, she feels like vomiting now that she's had to listen to all of this. There was one thing too in this moment that I wanted to ask you about. This is the first time I've ever heard of this, but Sskeer talks about the dawn of the Luminous, which I
Yeah, that
assume
was
is
cool. Yeah.
I would assume that's the beginning of the Jedi. But
Right.
now we think of Luminous. It used to always be Yoda and luminous beings, but we can't help but think,
Oh yeah, it
it's
was
the
one of those
writers,
like
right?
elbow to the rib cage, like yeah,
Yeah,
little wink. But yeah, Dawn of the Luminous.
yeah. But he says that is, for a Padawan to become, or a Padawan to become their own Jedi and kind of forge their own path. He says that has been the reward of every master since before the dawn of the Luminous. So I don't know if there's anything, and again, there's nothing. It ends
Yeah.
there, and they never make mention of it again. But I'm curious. It got my attention. Hopefully, they come back to that and visit. But
I have a feeling it was just a fun remark. Well,
yeah,
until it's not, until it's actually a thing.
yep.
We'll
And
find
then
out in the Old Republic.
yeah, exactly. So Avar, feeling that things are not right, decides to call Stellan Geos and's like, hey, what's going on? And this is where she gets some really kind of bad news, or a rude awakening of that.
This is the Fallen Star moment. Yeah.
Yeah, like, hey, thanks for showing up finally. But while you were gone, I've taken over as the head of Starlight Beacon. And she's like, wait, what? Like and
Temporarily, right?
yeah, he's like, no,
You abandoned your post.
yeah, he definitely calls her out. And there's where he's looking at it, it's like a very scornful look, like, you should never have done this kind of thing.
And it was very much like Avar was just an issue ago. It was the same that anger that we saw in Stellan. Because again, we got this from the Fallen Star, from Stellan's perspective in the book.
Mm-hmm.
And so now we kind of get it from her end too. And you could just feel how hurt she is by it. But he's not wrong, but he's also somewhat under the influence of the beasts that are on Starlight Beacon at the time, and all the stress and the strain and everything else that's been going on there. And he's very much in the place where Avar was as she was taking a swing at Lourna Dee.
Yeah, that's
and
true.
everything that led up to that. So Avar's kind of come across the other side. Stellan hasn't had that fortune.
Um, and like you said, this is the moment in the Fallen Star where you read Avar Chris say, we finally have, or what was the exact verb? It's the same line.
Yeah.
He says the wild Minot chase, we have a success, we have, and then gets cut off because that's when the first explosion goes off. And that explosion rocks the ship, the Anoraxia, which hasn't docked yet. It's just kind of floating next to Starlight Beacon. But it
But
knocks
even
her
it
back.
took damage. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it did. They lost power because of the explosion. I guess because of the proximity that they were there, and of course, again, ever the opportunist, Lourna Dee now takes advantage of the situation, given that they don't have power, which seems kind of like a terrible design flaw if you don't have a backup auxiliary power. But let's just assume that the backup auxiliary power was gone as well. And we also learn now, so now they're starting to witness at this point, everybody in the anorexia can see that Starlight Beacon is starting to fall. And their whole mindset at this point is we got to dock and try to get people off that because this is, they can tell this is not going to go well. And as they get closer to finally docking, there's a great disturbance in the force. They successfully dock, they get off the ship, and they head into Starlight Beacon, and immediately they start to feel very, very sick. So they're feeling the effects of the levelers and the amount of, I don't even know. Did we ever talk about how many levelers there were?
Well,
We assumed there were
we've
definitely more
speculated,
than
but
one, but
yeah, it seems like at least there were 3 or more.
well, because he also says, like Marquis on Row, and I don't remember if it's in the next issue or not, but he calls it a legion. Do you remember him using that term?
No, Keeve does
Is
in
it
this
Keeve?
issue. Yeah,
Okay.
she says that before they were just 1, but now they are legion.
Yeah, so I don't, I think Legion, I think like hundreds, but I know it's
Right.
not that many.
I'm guessing there are at least 3 on Starlight, if not more, in those packs.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there are at least 3 because we've got 3 different locations. We know that there's one stalking Stellan. We know there was one here with her and Sskeer. Keeve. Wow. Yeah, I'm shipping everybody. I'm Lauren now.
Yep.
And then there was one with crumbs. Who is the other one that? The one that from the Trail of Shadows with Cian and Emmerich.
Mm-hmm.
So we know there are at least 3, but there might be more.
Yeah, there's a lot of them for sure. But and prior to this, I kind of jumped ahead, but what they were doing is they were making their way through the ship, trying to find people to help evacuate.
Yeah, they extended a docking tube to try to help. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they sure came across a bunch.
Yeah, they did. And so like immediately they all start getting sick, and Keeve was like, no, not again. This is all happening. And poor Sskeer, like he's not affected by this, because he doesn't have a connection with the Force. And it ends on this panel, which is pretty gruesome, where you've got this image of Sskeer and I believe that's supposed to be Avar Chris. If not, no, it's Keeve Trennis, I think, through Avar's eyes. But she sees him as the like demonic looking people because of the impact of the leveler and what it's doing to her. So
right. And so she knows that it's Keeve, but she thinks Sskeer is this beast, and so she starts freaking out.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And we end right there, that they realize that the beast is on Starlight Beacon, where they just landed. And then let's get into the last one, because this last one is like probably my favorite. I know it's probably not fair to say, but there's so many great moments in this comic book. I cannot talk about them enough.
The artwork in this issue from start to finish is without a doubt the best artwork I've seen, like holistically in a comic in quite a while.
Yeah, he poured everything into this comic.
It was incredible. Like the pose of Sskeer, and man, just this was amazing.
Yeah. Okay, so we definitely see the toll that the levelers are taking again on Keeve Trennis. We get more of the trippy images, and we understand that they're feeding on the Force. There's that one image, and I don't have it up. We don't have any of the images up, but the one where it's like Keeve is seeing her reflection, but it looks like this, demonic looking thing that's just kind of hovering over her and scaring the living crap out of her. Really,
I think that was back in issue 11 or something, wasn't it? where it's like got it wrapped. It's like wrapped around her,
Yeah,
and
it's that
it's
same
like face to
image.
face. Yeah.
Yep. It's almost got, yeah, it's got its tentacles like all around her, holding
Yeah,
on to
and
her.
that's
So
something I'm glad you brought that up because that's something about the lever that's interesting is that it seems to take on the appearance of whatever you've got in your head. Like with Keeve, it's almost herself. In
hmm
Trail of Shadows with Emmerich, it looks like the crazy old lady that sings the song.
hmm
And so it's interesting how the shape, and with Avar, it kind of takes the shape of Sskeer.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting how the Jedi all perceive it a little bit differently, but all the same, very terrifying.
Yep. And I was going to say something else about that, but in the tentacles, I can't. I need to go back and look to see now if there were other examples of that. We know what this looks like now. If you've read or Eye of the Storm Part 2, you can kind of see at the very end. But we talked about this as it kind of looks like a mind flayer. If you ever seen that, where it's got and it where its mouth is, are just a whole bunch of little tentacles, and it looks like it walks on all four and that sort of thing. But this is the first time I think I've ever seen it kind of show those tentacles in the imagery that Keeve Trennis is seeing. And it suddenly stops. She's saved by Sskeer at this point because Sskeer comes through and puts a lightsaber right through this thing. So he's killed one of these things.
I think
Um,
he said he scared it away.
did he?
It looked like he killed it, but he said he just scared it away.
Oh, maybe, yeah, maybe they're tougher than we think. But yeah, definitely, you're right because it runs off, and then that becomes what his mission is. Like he sticks around to kind of go trace these things down and fight them off, and while they go out and try to get to the control center so they can kind of get assess where everybody's at. They're trying to Keeve and Avar are really trying to get to Stella Maru at this point to see who all is still alive up there where the Jedi sit. This is the Jedi Tower piece of it all.
Right. And of course, here comes the meaning of why Sskeer was given this condition, was for this moment to where he wouldn't be affected by these, that he could hold them off and defend them while they go take care of the more important mission.
Yeah. And then he says goodbye to her, which, we can talk about or speculate on what his ultimate fate is. But, he says that he'll see Keeve again. And then he says the Force is with me now and forever. And it's funny because technically the Force is not with him. It's probably more of a spiritual thing at this point.
Right.
Oh, and by the way, we forgot to mention poor little Jedi Noor is turned to a husk in this whole
Yeah, he did
fiasco.
not live.
Nope.
He was
Poor little
barely
guy.
known, and we barely missed.
Yeah. Yeah, he was one of those characters like, yeah, you're gonna die, dude. So yeah, he did not make it.
Well,
and so
Keeve didn't go completely unscathed either, because she's got the ash on her face, so she was definitely feeling the effects of it too.
yeah, like she's actually got cracks in her skin.
Yeah.
So similar to what like Tarek and Sarek went through as well, or technically are still going through at this point, anyways, until they get saved a little bit later. Spoilers. And then we cut back over, and this is a very quick moment. We don't really get it. I really wish I was hoping we'd get more Oberlin, just because I really enjoyed his time with us in the Rising Storm. But they're still trying to get the evacuees off the ship and get out of there. And so we talked about this too, where at one point Oberlin has this idea, is like, why don't we just use the tracker beam to kind of stabilize the ship from splitting in two, because he's concerned that this ship is going to split in two at some point.
Right. Should have already, by all accounts, it already should have.
Right? Yeah, right. It should have already split. He's not really sure why, but there's probably something we can do here. But the Nihil, right? We've just to kind of come back to it. Remember, they lost power, and so the Nihil have been running around amok on the Anaxia. And so they end up they overtake the Jedi there. So I think it's what do I said his name again? This guy Jedi Gunral Moonshi. He bites it. It was very similar to Empire Strikes Back, where the Imperial forces have entered the base. The Imperial forces have kind of thing. The poor sap dies. But Oberlin, and I know I'm jumping ahead, but I want to talk about this because I know he has a place in your heart. He's got a place in my heart. He's goo. So do you think he's dead? Because I still don't understand the physiology.
So, all right, so let's give a quick recap. Orbelin is the archivist, and he
Yeah.
has this green gelatinous something. So he wears a kind of like an astronaut spacesuit to keep him all contained and of shape. And then Lourna Dee comes in, and as he's continually trying to figure out what to do, just puts a blaster right through his helmet. I mean, literally right through the front of his helmet, and you could see the body with goo kind of dripping around everywhere. Okay, now that we've given some context,
Yeah. So
is he
I just
dead
jumped
or-
right into it. I'm struggling to think that he's dead. Maybe he is at this point. Maybe it's a moot point because I'm trying to remember now where the anorexia is, because to be honest, I think that just goes down because Lourna, Avar Chris gets away on a escape pod
Lourna steals it.
Yeah, that's right. She takes off. So if he is alive, maybe he's still on the ship with Lourna Dee. That's probably not a good situation, but
Right.
I don't know.
That's very possible.
It's just the physiology of a goo and a blaster bolt. At what point, what are you hitting? You're hitting vital.
Where are his organs at?
Exactly.
First of all, right. Yeah. Does he have organs?
Does he have organs? Yeah, I don't
know anything about it, but yeah. I'm with you. I hope he's not. I hope he comes back and gives her another lesson, because she remembers it. And she's like, that was for Valo.
That was for the stupid history lesson you gave me, you jerk.
That's for throwing coins at me.
Yeah.
That was rude.
She called him a worthless ball of slime. How dare her? How dare her, ma'am?
That's
ma'am.
right.
Sorry. All right. And then, Goonral dies. So what? And then Lourna Dee takes off the anorexia at this point too. So she's just earned herself a ship. Everybody gets a ship in this in the High Republic if they just stick around long enough. And where she goes,
nobody knows.
Nobody knows.
Yeah, we're not real sure if she goes back towards Markion or what the plan is for her, because she knows she's got choices, but it's really unclear. But so maybe a good chance to talk about Lourna Dee after the events in this comic or in this arc. Are you still in the camp that there is something redeemable about Lourna Dee? Now, I'm not saying that she doesn't somehow help bring down Markion Row for her own interest or something like that, but do you really think there's anything redeemable about that character from the eyes of the Republic or Jedi?
I don't know. It's tough. It really is. Like, it's harder, and it's getting harder and harder to get to a full redeemable, I'm a good person now kind of story arc with her.
Yeah.
I think what you said is more likely to happen now, where I think she will ultimately turn on Markion Row because he's given her enough grief. I think he has made a case for her not to trust him ever again. This is just another example where he's just failed to show up in her eyes. And I mean, she's not dumb. I mean, she knows that he's just using her for fodder and using her own people for fodder. So I think she will turn him in or give intelligence of some sort to help take him down. Markion, his plans have changed so much though, too. Like, I don't know, like, how valuable really is her intelligence, right? He's not, they've already found the Great Hall. They already know about the paths. I mean, what does Markion really have outside of his new impenetrable forces, this piece of the Outer Rim that he's completely cut out and isolated himself in, which she doesn't really have any, I don't think she has any intelligence on that. So I don't know where, she could go either way. Like, she can go a lot of different ways at this point. She has freedom to leave. I don't know why she would go back to Markion Row, I guess is what I'm saying. And I don't know why that she would try to align with the Jedi at this point. Is this the last we ever see of her? I don't know.
Well, and then trying to reconcile everything that happened in Tempest Runner. It's just, and this is why I think I had a bit of a issue with how Tempest Runner was, is because it really, especially all being from Captain Scott, it was just like we get this really uncertain path for Lourna Dee about what she actually, we know she wants freedom, right?
Yeah.
She doesn't want to be told what to do. She's tired of all of these different factions because they just want to use her, and she doesn't seem to have her own say so. But now she's kind of like chaos, enabled, and it's just kind of out, set loose.
Mm-hmm.
And to where, like, she doesn't want to help the Jedi. And I don't think she would actually willingly help the Jedi or the Republic. Whether or not she helps them inadvertently, maybe it might remain to be seen. But yeah. Oh, and Stephanie says she's one of those chaotic neutral. No, I don't know if she's chaotic neutral. Yeah, well, that'd be an interesting assessment of where she sits on the scale. But
I would say she's probably, yeah, I would say she's chaotic. And she's not, I don't think she doesn't have good.
yeah, in Tempest Runner, I would say she's chaotic neutral. But in this book, I mean, she tried to put a bullet in Oberlin's head. She tried to decapitate Keeve Trennis. She tried. I mean, how many
But
more?
what's the, like, yeah, I don't want to get into D&D, but you got to think about the intent. Like, what is the, if the intent is self-preservation, that's more of a neutral character, right? I'm only in this for myself kind of thing. If it's reckless and just for the sake of getting your kicks off it, then you get into the evil side of it, which I don't think she's technically evil. And
I think
pulling,
overall, I'm probably agreeing with you. She's neutral, but I think she tickles her fingers in the villain side.
well, and that's the point. That's the point of neutral. Like, those guys are the most, like, I know I joked about chaotic evil being the worst. At least with chaotic evil, you know what you're getting. You know what I
Right.
mean? With neutral, man, flip a coin. Those guys, those are the people you need to worry about playing with, because you don't know what they're going to. They dip their toe in just about everything, and it's only as as it's appropriate to them, whenever they can benefit from it.
Okay,
So,
gotcha.
yeah.
I am D&D inexperienced. I have been lessened.
But you listen, yeah. We should talk more about. We should do a whole show where we just assign Dungeons and Dragons alignments to all of these characters in Star Wars and
Sounds
debate
like a
it.
Patreon show.
There we go. Let's do it. I'm ready. Oh man, I got all kinds of books to talk about. Okay. Now let's get back to some kind of serious stuff that's about to go down here. So you've got Keeve and Trennis now. They're kind of walking through the hub area of where the Jedi are. And again, they even make a comment about, hey, there's this whole place should be falling apart by now. And they're not sure as to why until they walk into the great area. I don't, it looks like a big room. I think this is where, Stella Maru and all the Jedi kind of get together. Of course, it's all kind of coming down.
Yeah, it's hard to say what is this place.
Yeah. But it's a 2-page fold. And you have Stella Maru, who you learn in this moment is floating, like hovering there in this room by himself, completely strained. And you realize he's been using the Force this entire time to hold Starlight Beacon together and keep it intact so it doesn't splinter and fall apart. And there's a comment in there that she makes about how, he's still, quote, holding the beacon together, same as always. I think Avar Chris says.
Right.
But what a heroic moment for this dude. Like, by the way, did you know that he was a she in one of the early editions of Light of the Jedi?
No, I did not know that.
Yeah. So if you look at his name, it's a Stella. And of course, we would think that A is more of a feminine kind of ending for a name. But they decided to switch it because I think there was something with Avar Chris. I forget the whole backstory when there, but anyways, it was switched to a male character. Nonetheless, he's sitting there floating, and he's just literally holding everything together with the Force. And we talked about this when we were on Tarkin's Top Shelf about the detail, the level of detail in this particular spread is absolutely nuts. And you can just see the strain on his face. I mean, it's one of these, again, it's another moment where I feel like we've never really seen like anything like this, at least seen anything in canon Star Wars. But this is the kind of stuff that you see all day, every day in, Old Republic or, Force Unleashed, or these like really over the top type Jedi or Jedi displays of power. But this poor guy, man. And what he tells him is like, you guys need to escape, right? Everybody's been evacuated. Everybody, at least in the Spire, has been evacuated. They're all safe. But he's gonna go down with the ship. He's kind of like the captain, if you will.
Yeah, and again, it goes back to, and I'm sure you've got the quote. Oh yeah, here it is. Yeah, you always were our shining light, and the light must be protected, come what may. I mean, it was very telling. Again, it's not so much even though things have been really bad and things have been really tough, we have to sometimes cast that aside in order to rise up to be the person that we may not always want to be, but sometimes we have to be and need to be for the galaxy and for others, which is a burden. I mean, it's a tough thing. And she already feels like this weight of guilt that comes with this. But I mean, she has her super hero moment where she flies up into the air and helps Maru hold the station together, which was pretty neat too. And again, she starts bringing the Song of the Force, and we get this really amazing 1-page spread, which is actually the cover for the second printing of issue 15.
Oh, is it really? Oh, I got to get that. Yeah, I do.
So it has Avar with kind of like this blue background, but all the Jedi are kind of around her, that she senses. And Keeve is talking about how, she could feel, she's connecting them all once again, just like on Hetzal, or during the battle of Hetzal. There's also some that are no longer there, that are obviously missing.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just kind of speaks to that. But to spread on this one page, I'm so glad they did this for the second printing, because it is such a really cool piece of art. And again, I said the artwork on this issue is really worth picking up all by itself.
Yeah, this is our confirmation that we've lost more Jedi than we realize. And in the grand scheme of things, I mean, we only know a handful of Jedi, and by a handful I mean like probably 20. They've given us a lot of names, right? But
Right.
we got to remember there are a lot more Jedi in this era, and all signs, especially like in this comic, by the end of the Fallen Star. I think in the we talked about another one recently. Maybe it was Markion. No, it was in we haven't talked about it, but Midnight Horizon. Yoda. Oh crap! Spoiler. Yoda makes a comment about how, hey, we really need to like regroup because our forces have been decimated. So we don't know the true extent of how many Jedi we've lost at this point, but we know it's been a lot, and there were a lot more on Starlight Beacon than I think we're thinking about, that we know about, which was the whole point of Avar Chris saying, "Man, there's a lot of Jedi in here. Some of these I know, some of them I don't, but a lot of them are gone." So she definitely can't.
Yeah, and again, when we get to Trail of Shadows, we'll learn a little bit more there too.
Mm-hmm.
And you get Torben Buck in a pretty much naked in a diaper.
Yep. That's how they cook stuff, right? Or so yeah, she does get that cool moment, but it's, and while she's doing this, so she's sitting there using the Song of the Force, trying to pull everybody together again. You've got Maru still holding everything together, and you've got Keeve Trennis, who finally she finally finds Tarek and Sarek, and they're kind of, in that catacomb state, if you will. And right at that moment, there's a kind of a hole that gets blasted in the door or in the wall. And Keeve Trennis is like just seconds away from getting jettisoned out into space, which is a common thing. And it's the High Republic. It happens a lot. Right. She almost gets jettisoned out into space. And it's Tarek and Sarek who finally awake from whatever kind of lost state that they're in. And it was because of Avar Chris, right? Avar Chris she was able to influence at least the Jedi enough in this moment to allow these two guys to snap out of it right at that moment where Keeve Trennis almost went out into space, and they stop her from going there. So
I love it too. Not today, Keeve Trennis. They always use her first and last name. It's great.
Yeah.
They're so literal about everything.
They say none of us will die. Yeah, that's not true. You guys have been asleep, guys. There's been a lot that's happened here recently.
Right. Yeah, you need to catch up. I'll give you the cliff notes later.
And then it's so they're doing an admiral job. He's doing Stella Maru is doing an admiral job of keeping it all together. But when it finally breaks the atmosphere, is when it all kind of falls apart. Like it's beyond his control. Like this is too much to ask of anybody, right? In space, no gravity, no resistance. Yes, it's a really admiral display of power, but once it hit that atmosphere, this thing broke, and it breaks his concentration. He's still trying to keep it all together, but it definitely breaks Avar Chris's, and the song's broken at that point.
Right.
This is where she, I believe her. Like, it was a very selfless act to her to offer, but she offers Maru the opportunity to switch places. Like, you go, I will stay here, and I'll take over for you, and we'll try to keep this thing afloat as long as we can.
It's kind of like Stellan, right? I mean, you're the captain, you got to go down with the ship.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I think there's some of that guilt, that goes behind it, is that this was her post, and she did abandon it. She did leave it. And this is the result of it. And that's not necessarily her fault. She may not see it that way, but at the same time, it's she feels responsible that she has to be the one. And if it wasn't for Maru's words, she probably would have really pushed a lot harder. But Stella Maru's always got such a great way of saying things. But yeah, it was important for her not to be the one to die that day. And of course, neither one of them knew that Stellan was on the ship, and that was going to go the way it was too. Because you imagine losing both Stellan and Avar, and maybe Maru knew that. I mean, maybe Maru kind of had a type of vision that said that no, Stellan isn't going to make it. They really do need you, Avar, because if they lose both of you, then the Jedi Order is really going to be in a really difficult place.
Yeah, rocked. They'll be rocked for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, they still have Yoda, but
Well, I mean, they're the two youngest members, right, of the
well, yeah,
council. But again, that's also where you draw your inspiration from a lot of times too, especially for the up and coming. There's so many young Jedi, and Padawan's getting knighted every day, it seems. So those are their heroes now, not as
yeah,
much the Oppo Rancisis and Yodas and so on.
yeah. The Veter and those guys. No,
Yeah.
no, you make a good point. I mean, and that's. I mean, these guys are, yeah, they're up and coming. They're there's the younger Jedi are looking to these guys. I mean, yeah, they hold the older Jedi with in reverence as well. But these are these are the all stars guys, right? The
Yeah,
Avar
these are your
Chris's
sports stars you watch on TV every day. And
yep,
I mean, they're your heroes of today, right?
yeah. So no, that's a good point. Like I can see where he was thinking, hey, you're gonna do much bigger and better things than I will, and that's really what this is about. Generous offer, but thanks, but no thanks. And he then gets Casey, which we don't really talk about much, as one of his droids, to push Avar into a escape pod, and they take off in the escape pod. And his last words, as he's screaming in terror, as I'm sure he's just burning up at some point. I don't know really what's going on here, but it says, "May the force be with you."
I think he is actually starting to catch fire.
Yeah, yeah, that's how I took it. But he says, "May the force be with you, Marshall, always." And she screams, "Maru, I'm not leaving you." And of course she does. Yeah, and this whole thing goes up in flames. So, and then really it just kind of ends. Her escape pod hits the ground. She walks out and she meets Keeve Trennis is there. They kind of all land in the same area, of course, conveniently. And Tarek and Sarek are there again, still alive. They managed to pull through yet again. And she's devastated. The fact that Stella Maru saved her, and again, this is where I felt like she's starting to feel maybe some guilt of like, that should have been me. Maybe this wouldn't have happened. Like again, Avar Chris keeps missing all of these events, and I get why. But she's got to be feeling like, had I been there, I could have made a difference. Just like had I been at Valo, I could have made a difference. Just like I made a difference during Hetzal and
Right.
all that. So,
And she feels she was kept from Valo, right? Yeah.
yes,
Very
right.
important. Yeah.
She was not given that opportunity.
And she's in shock. I mean, we get a really great panel where, she's just like she looks lost. I mean, she's disheveled and she just looks lost, and she's kind of recounting what, she couldn't get the words out of what, out of her mouth when Keeve starts coming up to her of what Maru said to her as she was, getting shoved into the pod. And it gives a whole lot more. Again, it gives another dimension to when Avar and Elzar come back together in that moment of where she's as desperate for him as he is for her.
Yeah.
And all of these events have all led up to that moment. And it really makes for both a touching moment, but also a very concerning moment about where those characters are going next, because they've both been pushed to the absolute brink of where they're able to kind of handle this on their own.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a matter of, okay, are we really better together or better in that one? Or is it going to, can this be, considerably much, much worse if we do get together, or if they do stay together, or whatever that actually looks like. You put two, you get two people on the wrong path together. The two wrongs don't make a right. Some usually. So you're kind of wondering if it's one of those things they'd be able to keep each other honest, or if it's recipe for giving into more emotion and more of their wants and desires, I guess.
Yeah.
And their passion.
The last panel is one that kind of sticks with you for a while, honestly, in my opinion.
Yeah.
You've got debris from Starlight Beacon kind of still falling in the background, so it's still not over, right? I mean, this continues on for a little bit. I think they talk about it in the Fallen Star, where this debris just keeps falling everywhere. But you've got Keeve Trennis, and I guess we should have mentioned, and if you've read this comic, you know that most of this comic is told from the perspective of Keeve Trennis. I mean, she really is the star, the main focus of this comic book, and so you get to hear her insight, right, in kind of the thought bubbles, and you get understand what she's going through. But on top of, and I'll get to the wording here in a second, but the other thing that's really striking about this image is you have Avar Chris again, who is the light of the Jedi, and she's burying her head in the chest of Keeve Trennis, just in tears and distraught and emotional. And you got Keeve Trennis looking like older than she's ever looked, right? Like this is her a very defining moment, a watershed moment for her. Like she's really kind of grown up, and as it happened with a lot of them, like Belle definitely grew up in Phase One. She grew up in Phase One. Wreath and Wreath especially probably, but also Ram. These younger kids that we saw in Wave One have gone through some pretty serious stuff, and I love the fact that they are getting older and they look older, and they're so the image is her kind of being the rock for Avar Chris.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And,
Yeah, she
you
looks
think
very
of
mature and very. Yeah, she looks like that one that you would. You're the one that has to hold everyone together now.
Mhm.
Yeah,
and
she has that resolve.
you think about the very first issue in the High Republic and how much she looked up to Avar and how enamored and bedazzled she was when she was getting
Uncertain about
knighted.
her. Yeah, and uncertain of her abilities and all those things they're questioning. Yeah, it's such a huge turnaround for her.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So, I mean, it's 15 issues in. So, I mean, it's been about a year now for us, and it's been a year of war since all that happened too. So,
right.
they grow up quite a bit. So it ends with, now I have to now I have to step up. Now I have to be strong. And she kind of goes into what she needs to do now. She says, strong enough to find out what happened up there, to find out who those creatures or what those creatures were, not for Avar, not for Sskeer, not for me. We need to know for those who trusted us, for those we said we'd protect, for light and life. And so again, a very grown up statement. She definitely is much more mature than what she was. I also noticed she hasn't been cursing as much as she did earlier on.
Oh,
Remember that?
she
She
said
did say
Criff.
"criff," yeah, in this
Yeah,
one, but not like it was like potty mouth. Like every
it
other
was.
sentence was her doing that.
I
So
miss her. I miss that version of
you missed
Keith.
that version of her. But it definitely shows again growth or whatever. And the
Right.
last words at the very end says never the end, only a beginning. And that's kind of how the comic ends. So this wasn't the final thing. So we talked about this earlier with we've talked about it on the show, and we talked about it on Tarkin's Top Shelf today. But if you're following the High Republic and you're interested in kind of understanding the whole story, I hate to say you have to go pick up the comics, but you almost kind of have to pick up the comics. If nothing
Yeah.
else, you have to probably pick up at least the Eye of the Storm comics, to kind of get that finality. If you don't, I think this one feels like it was a pretty good ending. Like you could probably end it here. The Fallen Star, although, feels like there is still something missing. Like you need something a little bit more. If you're feeling that way, it's because you haven't read Eye of the Storm Part 1 and Part 2.
Right.
That is the true ending of Phase 1. So,
Right.
but Jonesy, what are your kind of thoughts either on this particular last scene, if there's anything else, and then just really what we got from Cavan Scott in this whole 15 issue run of the
Oh,
High
and yeah,
Republic.
the whole issue, right? And the whole 15. It was interesting because again, this really began with a lot of the Drengir. That's where this was really focused on. There was a little bit of Nihil, but it was really focused around the Drengir. And really the first half, almost the first, arc and a half was really
Hmm.
pretty much dedicated to the Drengir. And which again, it was like, okay, we made a big deal about them in other, in the uh, Into the Dark and some other places, but then they just kind of faded away in the books. And this was where you got to go to get all of that kind of detail about what happened. And again, I'm with you. I think they're definitely poised to make a comeback now because clearly they were just in the lake.
Yeah.
But overall, I mean, this was really it had its moments where it was a little slower than others. But when you get to this last, even before issue 11, it was already starting to pick up steam. And when you get to issue 11, man, it just finally it's like when you watch the pilot of a new TV show. When you watch the pilot of a new TV show, it's usually not all that great. It may have some moments where you're like, okay, this seems promising, but it usually takes several episodes into a season, maybe half a season, or maybe a whole season, before the show really finds itself, or it really finds its groove, and everyone feels kind of established and they comfortable with what they're doing. And then the next season, everything kind of takes off.
Hmm.
The High Republic comic really felt like that, where it was good. It had moments. It was doing the right things. There was some good artwork. There was good writing. But when it hit issue 11, and really maybe a couple of issues before that, it really hit its stride. And it was like, here's how good this comic series can be. And then we get to issue 15 with this artwork. I mean, it says, this is it. This is the pinnacle of Star Wars comics right here. For High Republic, issue 15, writing, art, storytelling, everything you wanted is all right there in front of you. And so I just thought that was fantastic and great. And again, you and I read a lot of comics in general, and we would love for other people to get more on board with it. But I think this is one of those issues where if you read issue 15, even coming into it or listening to the show and then reading it, hopefully you'd look at it and be like, wow, this is actually pretty good. Yeah. I can see why people enjoy this stuff so much.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I enjoyed the whole series. The first couple issues, like the very first issue, was pretty good, I guess. I enjoyed all of them really, but it wasn't. I mean, we had some good moments too, like with Avar Chris riding a Rancor. That was a very memorable moment. I would say this too: if you're a fan of Orla Jareni, there are a couple good issues in here where she does kind of make an appearance. They cross paths at some point, her and Keeve Trennis. And I think she picks up a lot of things from Keeve, or Keeve picks up things from Orla Jareni that I hope will, come back a little bit later. Orla Jareni is just one of those characters that's so wise. And I don't think if you've read the books, you really don't get a whole lot of her, to be honest. Well, if you've read the main books, you don't really get a whole lot of her.
Right.
But if you stick to the mid-grade books and then in this comic book, I think you'll get more and really have a true appreciation for what we've lost with her when she passes in The Fallen Star. So, but yeah, I mean, Kevin Scott is, a favorite writer of mine now, especially with this comic book. We'll see how it goes with, Claudia Gray coming in and picking up this series and some of the other stuff they've got planned. So it's a good time to be alive.
And so High Republic comic is also on hiatus until phase 2 officially kicks off, which won't
October.
be until this fall. So we've got a few months of where my pocketbook will be a little bit happier because I don't have to buy as many comics.
Well, it's the variants that are killing you.
The variants are killing me.
Let's be honest. Yeah.
Yeah. They don't. It's not one comic, folks. It's like, depending if it's like Amazing Spider-Man or something, it's like 12 every single month. So I'm like, okay, no, that's enough. I'm done with that. Just these 2 or 3. But yeah, no, it's going to be a void, in the High Republic space, because of course High Republic Adventures is done. All of the other material with Eye of the Storm and Trail of Shadows is done. The High Republic flagship is done. So it's going to be a bit of a void there for a while, and then Marvel will pick up with this in October, and then IDW is no longer in the mix. So High Republic Adventures will continue, or whatever that looks like, will actually be on Dark Horse. So our official return to Dark Horse Comics begins later this year as well.
Oh yeah.
It'll be interesting. I haven't seen a younger reader's book on Dark Horse before.
No.
Well, I guess they. Well, no, that's IDW. Yeah, I haven't seen a younger reader's book on Dark Horse before, so it'll be interesting.
They've done lighter.
Who's writing that one? Is that DJO?
For the Dark Horse series?
Yeah, Dark Horse.
He's staying on to write.
I know he's doing a graphic novel. I was presuming he was doing the comics too.
I'm almost sure of that.
Okay. That would make sense.
But okay, well, I think we'll kind of end it here. Hopefully we've spoiled enough of it and you guys have some good a better overall understanding of what was happening during this time and what you were missing if you didn't pick up the comics. But definitely go read them. And the graphic novels are out too, and there's always the digital format if you're into that.
The graphic novel's not out quite yet for the last wave, but it will be, I think, in just a handful of weeks. Maybe
it's
April,
like end of March, early April, somewhere in there.
Something like that. Yeah, so soon.
So that'll be the last 6 issues, which is the name of the arc is Jedi's Run or Jedi's End. And you said it has Marchion Row, right?
Yeah, so it's gonna be the last 5 issues of this series, Jedi's End, these 5 chapters, plus I believe it will have Eye of the Storm 1 and 2 in it. So it'll actually be 7 books in the one.
Okay. Or you could just go listen to the 2-hour show we did on those 2 comics alone. So either way.
Right. Or you just wait and read it in 20 minutes or something. Hey, you want to do some quick shout outs before we get going?
Sure.
All right. We had Mandy, Steph, Jeff, Kathy, Diego, Risk, Caleb. Man, good to see you, Caleb. It's been a while since we had you on here. Lauren, Twan, and Jonathan, who kicked us all off this evening. So thank y'all and everyone who was also kind of in the background watching. We appreciate you guys being with us. I'm looking at the likes here, see if there's any. Oh, Leland Henry and Richard Williams also looks like they were watching on Facebook. So appreciate you guys tuning in.
And Mandy. Did
Yeah,
you say
hi,
Mandy
Mandy.
already? Oh.
Yeah, I had her on there first. Yeah.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, and then as far as programming notes, we've got this Thursday will be a Patreon show. If you want to join us for that, even if you're not a Patreon member, you can still watch the show if you tune into the live stream on YouTube. And we're going to be going back to the Fallen Star. So our High Republic coverage is not ending anytime soon. But we're going to go back to the Fallen Star and cover some of the Nihil characters and kind of what they were going through. And then after that, this next Sunday, a week from today, oh boy, we're going to get into Trail of Shadows, which was another excellent comic series that came out and gave us a little bit more about the Nameless and didn't at the same time.
Yeah, it was good.
But it was a good comic, yeah.
Even though what's funny is at the end of that, well, I don't want to spoil it. At the end of that one, they're more like, we really didn't do anything.
Yeah.
But
we'll get no stone is left unturned here, so we'll be getting into all that. And then we still got what do we got that we're going to talk about? More Fallen Star. We got Midnight Horizon.
Yeah, looking forward to Midnight Horizon.
We got a Bell and Burryaga show, and then we got a Stellan and Elzar Mann show, as what we're saving for the very end here. So
yeah, and then we'll start looking forward to Celebration, listener Q&A, more Kenobi. I'm sure there's going to be more Kenobis we start getting ramped up. So lots to stay tuned for as we start rolling through into April and into May.
Yep. And the Dungeons and Dragons alignment show that we're going to do where
fine, I'll go write it down.
Put it in the backlog of ideas
right
that never get done. All right. Well, I guess that's it. We will see you guys Thursday. Any final words before we get out of here?
Nope. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, bye.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property, and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.